Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Ease Experiment. I'm so glad that the timing worked out to do this last week. And just a note, I have two screens going, so if I'm looking back and forth, that's why. So I apologize if that's disconcerting to anyone. I'm just trying to. It's the first time I'm doing this with two screens. Good morning, Adonis. So if that's a little disconcerting, then I apologize. But just so you know what's going on. And so I'm going to do my best to keep this concise and keep these videos this week concise. So if you do have questions as we go through some of the education and the practices, you can definitely put them in the chat, but I may not address them in this video. Please ask them, and I'll come back on and either do another video answering the questions, or I'll answer them individually. And how this is going to work is I'm going to do a little bit of psychoeducation, neuroeducation. Some days this week there'll be more of that, and some days there'll be less and more practices. So that's what we're doing here. And I'm glad, Allison, I'm glad you're happy to be here. And usually I say hi to people as they come on. Again, in the effort of trying to keep this concise, which for me is a little bit difficult, I may not do as much of that. So I'm really happy everyone's here. I'm so glad to be able to share this work right now because I feel like we desperately need it, like so many of us. And yeah, just being able to share it's very important for me, and helping like I can do something to be of service. And so essentially what this week is about is creating more ease. And the best way that I know how to do that is through self-regulation and to learn how to regulate our own nervous systems. And so, what does that mean? You can think about like a baby, or you can think about even a therapy session, and people will regulate to the most well-regulated person in the room, the person who has the best ability to come into themselves and be able to navigate with life's up and downs without going through these big extremes. And so we want to work on being able to become more of the people that are well-regulated, especially now. I think we need a more well-regulated society. And so why it's important on a personal level to work with this regulation is because it increases our body's ability to actually feel better and to feel better internally. And it increases our ability to feel more like our essential selves. And what I mean by essential self is back to the self before we had any trauma, before we were subjective to any, past conditioning, past patterning, learned behaviors through our childhood. We all have things like this. It's not inherently bad, but it can remove us from this degree of our essential self. So when we learn to regulate, we're actually learning to work more with who we truly and essentially are. And what this does for us is it enables us to have better relationships, and it enables us to make choices based on this place of who we are, where we feel very certain in our yeses and in our nos. And it helps us to make choices from this essential self place, again, versus, as particularly right now, versus a place of fear, or versus a place of survival based on past trauma. We learn these survival mechanisms and they become wired into our neurophysiology. And if we're constantly making decisions based on what kept us alive in the past, these may not be the best decisions for ourselves, for our families, and for our communities. And I mean this on a very broad scale, not just in light of what's happening now. So being able to regulate our systems and to learn how to do this and come back to more of a place of our essential self is incredibly beneficial for us. And so, great, this sounds wonderful. Maybe you're on board with nervous system regulation. And so how do we begin to practice? And so we want to work with this concept of interoception, which means, and I'm checking my notes a little bit more just to keep me on track so I don't wander off in a million tangents as I tend to do. And so this experience of interoception is being able to navigate our internal environment and to be able to experience what's happening in the body in the present moment. And so this is actually, the term interoception is found in the research, and it's actually the brain's ability to be consciously aware of what's happening. And so some people say the region of the brain, it's called the insular cortex. sometimes the anterior insular cortex, and we can also just call it the insula. This region of the brain that's activated in this conscious awareness piece. It's fascinating, actually. I was looking at a few articles yesterday just to beef up my knowledge of this. They've done some MRI studies where when people are aware of the sensation of cold, this insula lights up. When people just feel the cold, but they don't have that awareness of like, oh, I feel cold, the insula doesn't light up. And they've also found that in people that are long-term meditators, the right insular cortex is actually thickened. And so another really fascinating part about this insula is that the neurons that are in there, they're called VENS, V-E-N-S neurons. They're about 5 times larger than surrounding nearby neurons. And so what that means is that they're highly equipped for a long, fast transmission of information. And the really neat part about this research that's going into this is, and why I feel like this is the why that we know this is such a useful practice, is because they've found, I'm actually going to read to you verbatim from one of these articles, that subjective feelings are based on the active interpretation of changes in the physiological conditions of the body. And so what that means is essentially we're taking information, we're aware of information in our body, we're aware of these sensations, and we're able to interpret it in our brains, and that changes our moods, and that changes our emotional state. So this is exciting because for a long time, the research did that it was our minds that would have an influence on our body. And now more and more, we're learning this with gut health, but particularly in the realm of insula and insular cortex, that this information goes from our body up to our brains. And that's why doing the work that we're going to do this week and beginning to practice some of this interoception and beginning to practice some of this ability to feel and learn how to interpret and identify sensation, that's why this is important, because it will not only change and adjust our physiology and maybe help us to be in positions that are more settling and more comfortable, but it will also change our emotional state and how we're interacting with the world around us. So I wanted to give that bit of information today, and this is new for a lot of us, to be able to start coming into our bodies and to start identifying sensations and identifying what we're feeling is new. So if this is difficult or you're not quite sure as we get into the practices, that's perfectly fine. I encourage all of you to be gentle with yourselves. If you've worked with me for a little while, or if you've been in any of my groups, we practice bits and pieces of this. And so this week, through the ease experiment, we're going to build day to day on practicing these techniques. And so I want you to notice if you feel even just a little bit better. Hopefully at the end of day 1, you will, and day 2, and so on and so forth. But we're not necessarily looking for huge changes in the system. We're looking for small changes. So just keep that in mind as we go into some of these practices. And keep in mind with this regulation, and I'll talk more about this tomorrow, but with being well regulated, it doesn't mean that we're necessarily this super calm, Buddha, like everything's chill. Our systems don't work like that. So that's not necessarily the goal. The goal in being well regulated is to be able to go through, activation and settlement cycles. And tomorrow we'll talk a little bit about the window of tolerance and how we know that we're within a maintainable range of these activation and settlement cycles. For now, for this week, particularly in light of what's happening in the world, my goal is to create more of a sense of safety and to build resources for all of you so that you can use. So we're going to work on that right now. And this will be our practice for day 1. So I want all of you to please find a comfortable position. I think seated is probably better than standing. And just take a minute to kind of wiggle around if you need to. You can check in with your body. And I'm going to have you actually close your eyes for the first part of this. And I want you to visualize or to think of a place. This can be a real place. This can be a place from a dream or an imagined place in your mind. But I want it to be very clear and for you to have some details associated with this place. and a place that helps you feel connected, that helps you feel grounded or inspired or able to deeply relax. So just take a minute. If you need to cycle through a few places to see what sticks and lands, that's fine. And even as your eyes are closed and your mind is looking for this place, have an awareness of your body in the chair or on the ball or the floor. Just sort of a global awareness that you're still inside this container of your body. And then when you have a nice visual picture or have a sense of this place that feels grounding, connecting, deeply resourceful for you, in your mind's eye, just look around the environment that you're in. Notice what colors pop out at you in this place that's in your mind. Notice if there's any smells. And breathe those in. Take a few breaths, just inhaling whatever's in the environment of this place that is meaningful to you. Notice if there's any sounds associated with it. Maybe there's gentle music or birds or water. And just let yourself sink into whatever sounds are there that make this place part of what is so grounding and resourceful for you, connected or inspiring. And again, notice what colors pop out at you in this environment in your mind. Notice if you're moving in this environment or if you're still. And if you're moving, how that feels. If your feet are touching the ground, or maybe you're laying on the ground. Notice any contact that your body has with the ground in this place in your mind's eye. And allow yourself just another moment to settle in this region and this place. And then if you have your eyes closed, keep them closed, but start to bring your attention back into your physical body in the here and now. And I'd like you to take this opportunity just to do a body scan. And so just notice how your shoulders feel. Is there a sense of hanging, of relaxation? Notice how your back feels in between your shoulder blades. Have a sense of your spine running down your back, connecting to your pelvis. If you can, notice the 3D nature of your form and of your container. Of your spine around to the sides of your body, your abdomen, and to the front. And just notice what you might be feeling in any of these areas. Take a moment or two to practice some of this interoception that we were talking about. This ability to be aware of what's happening in your internal world. And then when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes when you're ready. And you can take a look around the environment you're in now, become grounded in the here and now. And again, just have a sense of what's happening in your body in these moments right now. And if that's too global of a term or too big to try to notice what's happening in your body, if that feels confusing for you or unsettling, pick one area. I like to work with my abdomen and my pelvis. For me, that's just a resourced place. I feel very grounded there. For you, it might be somewhere else. Could be your hands, could be your face. Just pick one area and just notice any sensations that are in that area. Notice how it feels after this hopefully calming imagery trip that we took. And then as you go throughout the day, I want you just to continue. This is our practice for today. I want you to continue to check in with how you feel and check in with that place that we identified. And if you're not quite sure where that place is, it's totally fine. Like I said in the beginning, this is new for a lot of us, and this is a practice. So almost like a meditation practice where we need to come back to it again and again, whether it's our breathing or a mantra, we're just practicing, learning to navigate our internal world. And so if there are any questions, please put them in the chat box, and I'm happy to come back and address them later. I've already gone way over my 5 to 10 minute mark, so I'm going to go ahead and end here for today. I will be back on tomorrow, same time, and we'll go through day 2 of the ease experiment, and we will continue to build on these practices so that you have a sense of how you can begin to understand and work within your own nervous system and become more well-regulated. Because I think all of us need more regulation in our own systems right now, and we can also become that source of regulation for those in our lives, which is well needed. And I feel like the reason I'm so passionate again about sharing this right now, especially, is because this will create a ripple effect. So please let me know if you have questions. Thank you so much for all of you who jumped on today. This is part of the ease experiment. It'll be Monday through Friday this week, 8:30 a.m. PST. And I will see you all tomorrow. And if there are a lot of questions, I will come back and answer them. And thank you, Allison, for saying that you feel calmer. Definitely notice how you feel after this. And try, if you can, to notice what sensations are associated with that. Like, how do you know you feel calmer? Where do you feel calmer in your body? Is there a sense of, see, this is what happens. I go way over time. So I'm going to end here. Thank you all so much. And I'll see you tomorrow.